Hello and welcome. My name is Jess and you're listening to Legaltini, your very own sip of law school. The goal of this podcast is to give you just a taste of what it's like going to law school. Whether you're already in school, considering it, have a loved one currently experiencing the fun that is law school, or you just want to follow my journey, I'm so glad you're here. You can also follow me on Instagram at legaltini_podcast and check out my website legaltini.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to rate and review below. Grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Hello, welcome back to Legaltini. This week we are talking about building mental strength, and this is something I've talked about before. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I think it's something that people don't often think about as a muscle that they can build or something that they can work towards. They think that you're either good under stress or not, and I just disagree. I think that it's totally a muscle you can build and something that you can get better at. And here's how. First of all, perspective. When we think of the word perspective, we often think of a mental state and our perception of the world around us. You might have a different definition, but generally speaking, when I talk to people about perspective, this is how they view it. So try to think of this word also as a vantage point from which you're seeing something. That might have already been how you thought of the word, but some people have different definitions, so I wanted to get us all on the same page. Think about this. When you look at a beach ball, yes, a beach ball, hear me out. You know how it has the different stripes down the sides with different colors usually, very vibrant. If you look at the beach ball directly from one of the sides, you're going to see just one side of the sphere and only the colors that are displayed on that side. If you rotate the ball, you may see new colors, but you sort of lose sight of the ones that just rotated away. Whoever is on the other side of the ball or a different side of the ball, think has a different perspective, is seeing an entirely different combination of colors than you, but they're looking at the same ball. So now imagine that instead of looking at the ball squarely from the side, you're looking at it directly from above. You can see the point where all the colored sections come together, right? So you can see all the colors at once. This is a shift in perspective. Your vantage point has changed and you're able to see different things. Shifting your perspective when it comes to challenges is just like rotating the ball around until you can see all the colors and how they interact with each other. When you're in a tough spot or you're feeling challenged or frustrated by an experience, think about changing your perspective to better understand and navigate the situation. Maybe it's a situation at work that you don't like or understand. How many different perspectives can you view the situation from? How does your coworker view it? Your boss? Your employee? What do they see when they look at the situation that may be different than what you're seeing? If you're drowning in law school books and you can't see the end in sight, what's a different perspective? What does your professor see when they look out at the, crowd of students in the room? What does your family see as they watch you go through this situation? What do the attorneys that you're meeting at a networking event see? What does your future self see once this is all said and done? Do you think that they're looking back worried about whether you'll get cold called in class today? No, your future self is looking back and thinking, wow, what a time. And look how much I've learned and grown from that situation. I wouldn't feel so confident speaking in front of other people now if I hadn't been forced to do it in school. Or I wouldn't know what I know now, or have the job that I have now, have met the people that I've met, etc., if I hadn't gone through that experience. Changing your perspective doesn't make the challenge go away. It just makes you better able to navigate it because you have a broader view and not tunnel vision where you can only see your view. So more information equals more options to think about workarounds and solutions. The more perspectives that you can see, the better equipped you are to handle a situation. So now, how do we do that, right? I mean, that's all fun and games to talk about, but how do we actually change our perspective? I've got 3 ways to shift your perspective, and then I also have several tactics to just build mental strength that have really worked for me. So the first thing to do is just to see how it's bigger than today. The situation you're in, the world, life, you, all of it is just sort of bigger than the stress and the challenge of today and what's right in front of you. Understand where you sit in the scheme of what you're doing. So whether it's at work or at school, in your family, in your community, understand how the world is bigger than your day-to-day stress. This can be easily done by just going on a walk and noticing other people's existence around you. What challenges could the woman walking on the other side of the street be going through? Maybe she's in a fight with her daughter. Maybe the teenager scooping your ice cream is dreaming about attending a college and is just waiting on acceptance letters on the edge of his seat. Maybe the maintenance worker is getting married next month and is stressed out about finance. Maybe your neighbor just lost his job. Maybe there's literally no limit to this kind of thinking because every other person in the world is living in their own reality at the same time as yours. So recognizing that you're not the only one existing in this space helps to sort of alleviate some of the pressure. Right here, right now, everything must be exactly perfect, that sort of mindset. So know that you're going through a challenge, but you're not alone in that challenge, and you're not alone in the world at all. This helps me to understand, and maybe it will help you to understand where you sit in the scheme of what you're doing. Again, nothing substitutes hard work. I'm not saying you can gain a little perspective and everything becomes easy. No. I'm just saying that your options for navigating those challenging waters multiply when you look at the larger picture and recognize that you're not in an isolated bubble. The world is carrying on, and so will you. Now that you know you're not alone and you're not the center of the universe, you should also see where you do fit into the picture. So another way to deal with challenges is to see the other side of them. Law school is a great example of this because it's 3 years, maybe 4 if you're doing a flex program, or if you're adding on a master's degree, something crazy like that. It's basically just a series of 6 15-week sprints, right? We can all do that. Consider your role and consider what role you want to have. What are your goals for the next year, for the next 5 years, for the next few years? Think about where you fit into the picture and you're able to sort of create a scheme that you're within. I find that chopping things down into more manageable bites is easier. So like I said, if you break law school down into 6 15-week sprints, it feels a little bit more manageable. Or if you want to think about it as 6 semesters or 3 years or whatever, right? You can break it down however you want, but it makes it easier and less scary, less big if you can get it sort of into bite-sized pieces. Lastly, revisit your why as often as you need to. Literally tape it to your forehead if you must. It's important to spend time reflecting on your why to maintain your focus and motivation and really thinking through the reasons that you're pursuing a goal. It can help you to clarify what your values are and your priorities and help you make decisions between is this more worth my time or is that more worth my time? And you can identify any areas where you want to make adjustments or get more resources. Just taking the time to explore what your why is on a regular basis, you really can stay connected to your purpose and increase your chances of success in achieving your goals because you're really connected to why you're doing it. During hard times this last year in law school, my friends and I would take turns helping each other remember why we're here. And having people around you to remind you of your value and your worth and your strength is hugely helpful on days when you are having trouble seeing that yourself. And then you can provide that to them when you're feeling strong, vice versa. And huge shout out to my law school friends who are wonderful, just wonderful people. So that's kind of the large chunks of how I would shift your perspective. So making sure that you see life is bigger than today. It's not, everything doesn't have to be perfect today. Also seeing where you sort of fit into the picture of this whole goal in the scheme of all your other life goals. And then also revisiting your why as often as you can so that you really stay connected to your values and why you're putting in all this hard work. Now, those can feel a little daunting or a little, existential. Like, okay, how great in theory, but how do I actually do that? So I have, of course, some tactics to help build mental strength and some stories from some crazy times in my life that have really contributed to me having what I would think of as very strong mental strength and just ability to sort of grit through hard times. So the first one is huge, and it is to listen to yourself. And this is harder said than done. No, easier said than done. It's easier said than done because listening to yourself requires actually talking to yourself and being willing to share those feelings with yourself instead of burying them deep down. So hear me out. When you have a gut reaction to something, spend some time considering why you reacted that way. Are you stressed about something else? Are you angry that other people are taking time for themselves when you don't feel like you can? That's me. Are you insecure about what you're contributing to the team? What is it? So if you have this like big internal reaction or even an external reaction, or you lash out at your loved ones or something, when you have sort of an emotional response to something, stop yourself and really try to process why. What is the root of that? And it's a tough step when you're not in the practice of introspection. It can be really hard to access these feelings. And sometimes if this part is really hard or scary, then that's a good time to bring in a professional for a few sessions. Even just a couple meetings with someone can give you the tools to look inward for a productive exploration of how your experiences shape the way that you react and feel about new scenarios. A very close friend of mine recently decided to see a counselor for some challenging emotions she had been dealing with on her own for many years. She was afraid to go see someone because she thought that maybe that meant she couldn't handle it on her own, or maybe it meant she had a problem, or it meant defeat in some way. And maybe on the other hand, it was just about cramming one more obligation into a very busy lifestyle. Really, it was probably a combination of all of those things. But when you remove some of those obstacles and you decide that your mental sanity is important to you, it's just a small portion of one day to just try it. Anyways, this friend has told me about her experience, and even just a few sessions really gave her the tools and the bravery that she needed to face some of those things that she had been for many years pushing away. But it had been right there under the surface and sort of impacting how she responded to other life situations. All this to say, listen to yourself. Where you see smoke, like an extreme reaction to something that isn't really that big of a deal, but somehow you're really reacting to it. So when you see that smoke, there's usually some underlying fire producing that smoke. And it's not bad. It's not inherently bad to react to things, right? Like, we're human. We're supposed to react. We need to react. It's the process of going through life willing to grow and bend and change shape as your surroundings are changing shape. Introspection is tough at first, but once you get into the practice of doing it, it becomes easier and much more natural. Journaling is a great first step. Just start by jotting down things that you're grateful for or listing out everything you've currently got on your mind. The journey to listening to yourself begins when you let yourself talk. Second thing. First was listening to yourself. Second, recognize when you're being pushed. Recognizing and deciding to be grateful for the ways that you're expanding and growing. So stop resenting that growth. Stop treating it like that as punishment or that challenges are these burdens that we must carry. Instead, start viewing them as opportunities to grow. I remember being so stressed out during my last career as a healthcare administrator. And that means healthcare administrator means I was in charge of the operations of a healthcare facility. And wow, did that mean new fires every day and no end in sight, especially once the pandemic hit. There are specific moments I can recall of being just near a breaking point and having to pull myself out of that and push forward. I was the leader that people were looking to for answers and for strength, and sometimes I felt zero of the strength that I had to project. And other times I felt really certain about our direction. I leaned on the team that I had surrounded myself with, and they leaned on me too. And there was a time in my early career that we were having an absolute crisis day, just one thing after the next. And then my direct supervisor, so the regional director of several facilities, he was fired by the owner of the company. And maybe it was the right move for the company, maybe not. I have no insight into the reasoning or what happened or anything, and that's not the point. But my experience was wild. I remember he was at my facility when he got the phone call. Right? A phone call to fire someone seems horrendous, but again, not the point of my story. He walked into my office and I started to launch into what we needed to do for the current crisis in the facility. And, I'm kind of just carrying on like this little snowball that was rolling along. And he just stopped me mid-sentence and he said, "So I no longer work here," and just stared at me. And we just stared at each other for like 10 seconds in disbelief at each of our respective situations. He had lost his job, his, livelihood, purpose, whatever. I mean, the guy had a family with young kids, big deal stuff. Of course, he landed on his feet. I gave him a great reference. He's fine. But my scenario was mine. Here I was, a young professional with way more responsibility than anyone else that I knew my age. I think I was 25 at the time that this happened, and he just walked out of my office while I felt like I was drowning or on fire or possibly both at once. Before he left, he looked at me and he said, "You can handle this. I know that you can." And then left. I watched him from my window in the parking lot. He just drove away, and I shut my office door. I will never forget this. I shut my office door. I turned and looked into the mirror with tears just brimming in my eyes, and I knew in that moment that I had a choice. I could either crawl under my desk and hide from the challenge, or I could take a very deep breath and do my best to put one foot in front of the other. I felt totally alone and scared and underprepared. Like I just didn't have the experience. I was so overwhelmed by everything. And I looked at myself and I chuckled a little bit and decided I had no choice but up. I mean, there was no swimming down, right? I had to just go up. So I picked up my phone, called the people that I had in my life that supported me, and I wasn't alone anymore. And then I made a list of what absolutely had to be done and the steps that I knew to do each thing. And I knew that I could do all of those things. And then I wasn't scared and I wasn't underprepared. I had a plan. And now you see why I focus so much on planning and tackling hard things one step at a time. The key in that moment for me was that I recognized that I was being challenged and pushed. And I also recognized that that experience was going to grow me and push me to be a better version of myself. And it truly did. Without that experience and many others like it, I'm genuinely not sure I would have been able to handle the pandemic and healthcare, or attending law school for that matter, in a state across the country from my home and from my people. Every challenge creates another stair step that leads you to a place that you wouldn't have had access to without the stairs. So with that point in mind, my next point is that we always spin it to the positive. Just like in that challenge, I sort of decided and looked at this challenge as an opportunity to grow. So we all have these stressors in life. And if you say you have no stress in your life, first of all, no way. Second of all, maybe you're just ignoring them because that just cannot be real. Third, you need to break out more. You need to get out more if you don't feel like you have stress in your life. But I bet you do. So if you're like 100% of humans who have things in life that are challenging you, write down everything that you're stressed about and find something positive about each one. This is how I trained my brain to see the positive in any situation. You can grow from anything. So there's always the fallback positive that you are learning from this situation. You can also fall back on something being temporary. Law school, for example, is really, really, really hard, but it is temporary. It's growing me and changing the way that I think and work. It's teaching me valuable lessons. It's introducing me to new ideas and new people, new doors that are opening in my career. I could go on, but bottom line is it's temporary. What's another common stressor? Money. Gosh, money is stressful, right? Money challenges. You cannot tell me that you've never stressed about your financial situation. In this economy, what are you kidding me? Whether you're planning for you or your loved one's retirement or considering how to afford college or how to afford dinner, money is stressful, period. My positive spin would be dependent on the situation. If it's college, this means you have an opportunity to educate yourself, expand your horizons, and create career paths that were not previously accessible to you. That means that this is good debt. So yes, it's stressful and we're going to make ends meet and we're going to do all these things, but it's also good debt at the end of the day. And at least you have the capacity to consider and shift gears in a career if you're not enjoying what you're doing or if you want to do something different. Maybe you're struggling with certain personal relationships. This means you have people that you care about and that matter to you. If you're stressed about work, it's growing you, like it grew me, to face future challenges. There's a silver lining to everything. You just have to be able to identify it. And it doesn't make the hard thing go away or make it beautiful or lovely or rosy, but it does make it a little bit more palatable to be able to sort of push through it. Spinning your hard thing to the positive reminds you that you're in control of how you react to stressors in life. You can let it consume you to the point where you cannot see through it. That's an option. Or you can gain perspective, shifting the lens through which you're looking at it, and see how the challenge is actually serving you. That makes it easier to go through. Doesn't eliminate the stress, but it gives you a better vantage point. Okay, last tactic is to exercise different muscles. So another way to build mental strength is to exercise these other muscles. This can be physical, creative, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is. You'll find commonalities between those areas and personal life. So for example, I've run several races like 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, one full marathon. To me, running is parallel to a lot of things in my life, and it feels very similar to different things. That's a whole podcast probably on its own, but I enjoy considering running as sort of similar to thematically to life. So you have periods of running that feel like hell and they're just hard and it's just icky. And usually for me, it's like the first 1 to 2 miles and then I kind of get better and it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. But for whatever reason, when I first start running on any run, basically, the first couple miles feel terrible. And I'm like, why am I trying to kill myself right now? Like, why am I doing this? Anyways, so there are periods like that. And then there are periods that really just kind of click and feel really rhythmic and you're kind of in your zone. And I also know that when I'm doing consistent yoga or some other kind of cross training, running gets easier. And my body responds so much better to training programs when I'm doing cross training at the same time. And the same applies in my life. When I'm consistently exercising other muscles that complement the main event, the process gets easier and more streamlined. So having hobbies or social interactions, purpose outside of ourselves, and so many other sort of air quotes like cross-training type activities, the daily grind of our lives feels so much more livable and purposeful. So when I'm running and I'm in a really hard time, I count in my head, which is maybe just something I made up. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I usually count like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm counting my steps as I go, and I just count 1 through 4 over and over again. I don't know where I heard that. I don't know where I learned that. But sometimes when I'm catching myself in a really stressful time in life, I think of that. And I almost think of that lesson. Like I can do 4 steps at a time. I can do just this one thing at a time. And if I focus on that cadence, eventually I get to the top of the hill and then I'm on to the next challenge. I can see the parallel between that and life. So I see it in life when I'm going through something really hard and I go on a run to relieve stress and I'm counting and I'm reminding myself I can do hard things. I can do 4 steps at a time. And then conversely, when I'm in life, I think of running. Okay, I can get to the top of the hill because I can do 4 steps at a time. Adding these other sort of cross-training style things in life might feel counterproductive initially because you're already stressed for time, you're already overwhelmed, but think of it like yoga to running. It's stretching, it's building different muscles. It is a valuable way to spend your time. So when you're stressed out and you need sort of a reprieve from the stress, have something that you're also finding purpose in that can sort of counteract or be the thing that builds other muscles, if that makes sense. So to sort of wrap up what we've talked about today, we talked about perspective, making sure you see how it's bigger than just today. Think about other people's challenges. Other people are going through life just like you are. And so you're not alone. You're not alone in those challenges. Also see where you fit into the picture, the grand scheme of your life. Right now you're in law school. Right now you're in this really tough job. You're in a crazy time in your life. You've got kids running everywhere. Whatever it is, see where you're fitting into the picture and how this is part of those stair steps. This is part of your journey and part of your really achieving your bigger goals in life. Also revisiting your why as often as you can to really drive your values and clarify what your goals are and identify areas where you're maybe getting off track, but you need to come back to your core why and the true reason that you're doing all of this and going through these challenges. And then the tactics that we talked about. Listening to yourself, of course, starts with actually talking. So get out your journal, meet up with a friend, call your mom, schedule an appointment with a therapist, whatever you need to do to just get it out a little bit and kind of start to unpack some of the things that you're going through. Introspection, it's tough. It's really tough at first, but once you get going, it really does become more natural and you do it so much quicker and even without thinking of it. Also recognize and appreciate and really be grateful for the times that you're pushing yourself or being pushed by challenges. There's nothing else in this world that will give you the tools that you need to face later challenges. Sometimes you just have to go through things to learn them. Third thing is always spin it to the positive. Find a way to give your challenge meaning. Understand what the benefits are going to be from those challenges, and that can really help you to be able to push through them and give you that last gust of energy that you need in order to get through it. And then lastly, exercise different muscles. So find creative ways to work on your physical or creative or emotional, spiritual strength, and find commonalities between those areas and your personal life, and how there might be parallels where you can learn from each of those experiences and have them contribute to the challenges in your life. Hopefully, as you head into your next semester of law school or into your next season of challenges, this is helpful information on how to build and really keep growing your mental strength as you go along through life and through all the fun that is ahead. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.